And then you can get your stuff in there.
I don't know.
I'll look and see who it is and I'll message you.
Gavel us in.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. We are live streaming tonight for the first time, so hopefully it works correctly. We have mics, so all these here are big mics, and everything reverberates through the room. So if it's, I've had some requests from some citizens they'd like to make a comment. Do you all have any issue with that? And we welcome our friends from the city. This is not a county meeting or a city; it's a joint meeting. So anybody who wants to say anything, I think we're the only representatives here. So
Appreciate y'all hosting us. Thank you.
So we'll get started. If there's anybody who'd like to get up, make a quick comment, come on up and we'll jump in and get in with the talks.
You want me to make a comment now?
You what would like?
So I've emailed all of you, and that was basically my concern. But just so everybody knows, my concern is with the board for the animal shelter. And so I'd like to see it be less of a political entity where you don't even have balance of political entities. Proposal is for 2 from the county, from the city, and 1 appointed by the county. So that's going to make it top heavy on the county. I'd like to see either that 5th person nominated by all 4 and voted on by all 4, somebody that everybody would agree on, or choose somebody from the animal shelter, the Friends of the Animal Shelter, off of their board or off of their membership. The other thing that concerns me about the board, if they're directing the shelter and managing a shelter and looking at long-term goals, the board members need to be continually educated on those things. And there should be some requirements for that. To stay, the one organization I know that provides training on animal issues is the American Humane Association. The Humane Association of the US, I think they also offer training. ASPCA probably does also. I tend not to favor ASPCA. Let's see what else. That's the main thing. I just feel like the members of the board, need to be aware of animal issues. And I'm sure this board that we have or had, they're really aware, but I'm not sure that, random 2 members from city council and county commissioners, if they're going to be aware and be educated on the subject. So, that's all I have right now.
Actually, your name?
Mary Harvey. Yeah. I'm in Carter County.
Thanks. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir, Mr. Winchester.
As some of you know, I'm Jim Winchester, and I have given Commissioner Bailey a bad time because I've been very concerned about the welfare of the animals. I'm like Papa Bear with my cats and kittens. But I have heard that you are advocating a spay-neuter clinic, and if you are, that is a huge, huge step here, because the idea is to eliminate having that many animals and then you save the budget. So if that's your plan, I think it's a great plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
you like to cover first? I mean, you don't have any set goal, or you want to go over funding first, or the land first?
That's what we were going to offer was if you wanted to have want to run down some topics and we pick one from there. It doesn't matter. I mean,
Sounds good.
However you want to do, I laid this out, this is what the county commission passed.
Sure.
If we can go down, you want to go down one?
My concern with if we lose ourselves in the language,
Yeah.
I was thinking if we instead come to an understanding of what either side really has on its mind and we can work on those, I think we can let the details fall into place on the backside. We can just get lots of big chunks out.
On the land, would you all be willing, because here's the thing, it was stated, probably misinterpreted.
Yeah.
That basically, you all may have to upgrade the sewer or something there, and, we may have to move our building or something. And I think that was a little bit taken out of, I don't think that you're planning on going down and moving it.
I can show you on a map that that's not a problem at all.
But for us, people saying we own it, that's great, but nobody expected this argument to come about the way it did. After talking to some people and looking at, some of the maps and some of the things you all looked at and talking to some other city councilmen and other commissioners, I mean, if I was in your all's point, I wouldn't give up the land either. So would you just be willing to, you all keep the land if something happened? And let's say the building is valued at, let's say $1 million. We know it's a 50-50 agreement right now that basically if we was to ever leave or you wanted to leave, that you were going to buy us out at half of that value. Because in short, starting up the building of it, you all have half of it invested in it also. I mean, is that right? I mean, Travis, you all, that when this actually started, the city
I believe that's correct.
put half in it and
Whenever capital expenditure is 50-50.
and right. So basically, let's say it was valued at $1 million, well, then you would have to buy us out at half a million. And that way you won't own it. That way we know building, we're putting our money into a building. Because it's hard for the commission to sit here and say, okay, we're gonna put money into this when we don't know if we're gonna own it.
Well, and y'all, anybody can correct me on that point. Well, before I get to the point, I guess that presupposes that there's a break coming, and if
No,
part ways, because my thought was, in general, I think we're better off trying to do it together, and we're going to save taxpayer money if we can operate it together. I know we got to that those terms are worked out and that everybody's okay with it. So that's the kind of the first statement, and the other one is, here's where please correct me, but if I understand how the original, what we have in the current contract now is, the county owns the building. We funded half of it, but and the city owns the land. So I don't know how that interfaces into it. Are you wanting us to take title to half the building now, or what's the? I just don't understand.
it was brought up in the commission, okay, us putting money, our county taxpayer money into a building that we may not own. Because, Mr. Harden, correct me, in the state of Tennessee, it's in the deed that we own it, but it's sitting on their land. So how, if something happened, I mean, it's on their land.
I think the concern that was expressed from the commission was, of course, improvements on real property go with the real property. You have the deed, you own the improvements on the property. So it's kind of a fallacy. It's not a trailer. It's not a modular. It's a permanent structure built on the land. So the deeded owner of the land owns the improvements on the property. And I think saying something other than that in the agreement is kind of a fallacy. Say we actually own the improvement.
Okay, and again, back to the earlier point, I know that I had heard that the expansion of the sewer treatment plant was an issue, and I don't think it is at all, particularly if you don't go westward. And if you did a little bit, we're all on board with that. It's really, we just need to make sure we got enough elbow room there, and there's quite a bit. I can show you an aerial of that if you want to look at it. That's not an issue at all. I don't think we'll have any use in the foreseeable future for what what land is adjacent to the animal shelter. There's enough elbow room there. Again, I think if you look to the east, also toward the property line, which is room there as well. I mean, again, there's plenty of room to the west toward the treatment plant, but I think we've got enough elbow room. We wouldn't want to go way, way far west. So I guess to Mr. Harden's point, what specifically are you asking for? Do you want half ownership of the building? Do you want something deeded to show that it's outside the
I
contract?
think it would help if the county realized if something ever did happen, that they knew their money being invested. It's like owning a house. If something was to happen, they've got their money invested in it and they can get it back. I mean, right or wrong, it's sitting on your property and you own half of it. For us to move our half, how do you do that? I mean, when we sit and say somebody's moved, that don't mean that. That just means, look at how this is already developed out. We're trying to come to an agreement here where everybody agrees. So it just, if it's valued at $1 million, what would be the problem of, okay, if something ever did break down in the future, 10 years from now, it could be bought out. I mean, that's all.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be that you all would be paying for the whole thing because, again, you want to have half of it invested in it. Nah, I think that's a fair trade.
I actually correct some of the numbers that are being bandied around.
Well, I'm not worried about the valuation at the current time.
No, that's not, it's the ownership piece. When that building was first built, the Friends of the Animal Shelter paid a quarter of it. The county paid 250, and I understand, I think the city paid about 150. So a quarter of that original building paid for not by the county, by the county. Since then, the expansion has not been paid by the county. It's been paid by the Delorda Trust to put on those rooms and extensions. And we're currently in the process of the Friends Group funding some more building improvements. So the county actually only has 250,000 vested there in the building. You've been paying running costs, but it's 250,000. That's what the county's paid.
I won't quibble with what improvements have happened and who's paid for that. I wasn't present for it, but I do have from Mr. Edens, who was the city manager in 2012, an item that went for the council that showed $203,872.50, each by the city and the county. So that was an even number from us, and $91,500 from, as it says, and again, I didn't write this, who was the Animal Shelter Building Committee at the time, whoever that was, and I can't speak to that entity. But it looked like from city and county's perspective, our contribution was equal, but that wasn't all of it. But between the two of us, we were in for the same amount.
Sorry.
Well, I can tell you're on YouTube.
I hear you. Yeah. Sorry. So that is one point I think that would clear up, however you all decide, and something that we was looking. I mean, that's.
A couple of things that, we need to know what the value of the building would be. The other thing, I would think there could be language in the operating agreement that could address some of that, protect the county and protect the city. So, we've got some options here on which way to go with this.
Well, and I appreciate the county's investment in it, and likewise the city's, but we're a parting of ways there somewhere down the road, like you said. I don't feel that it's fair for us to buy out what was donated. If you're going to buy out the county's proportion, okay, maybe we can talk about that.
That's part of what.
I don't know how, but we can talk about how we get there, because what improvements have been made subsequent to the initial construction, and how you slice that. Again, that may not be for today, but you can consider that. I don't have an answer for it off the top of my head, but again, I don't think it's fair for either party to buy the other half out if it includes what the Delorda estate or other improvements that have been donated have put in, because that's been benefit to the community and by extension, these two governments just by default.
Maybe it would take some legwork to
Right.
go back on top of 203
Yeah.
and figure out all the capital improvements that have been funded by both governing bodies over the years to get a true value of what you've actually invested in it.
I mean, well, nobody's looking at it now. That would be an appraised value. Let's say something happened in 8 years. You'd have to go off the value of then and what was invested then, not now. We're not asking for a set number. Just look at something where it's wrote in there to where later on, you don't never know. And that leads to part of the conversation of Mr. Winchester. Miss Shannon back there, I believe, said she'd like to have about an acre cut off. Well, if we're gonna push to build that, we gotta know that if we're gonna put money in building it again, is it gonna stay the county's if something happens? You see what I'm saying? I mean, it's hard to build on somebody else's land, knowing, okay, if something happens, well, are you gonna fight to get your money back or something? And that's, so I don't think you see that we're trying to leave if we're getting ready to try to build a spay and neuter or even come to propose to put it in there.
I haven't heard any of those details from Ms. Posada, if she wanted to subdivide it or not.
I am for that because that is something that I've been talking about for a while and some other commissioners, and I think that's the biggest need to help to cut down on the money is because if you don't have as many animals running around.
No, I'm not arguing the need of the spay neuter clinic. And I mean, I guess that your point was you want that property subdivided off into a separate parcel. That's the point. We could talk about how spay and neuter happens and how it gets paid for. That's beyond the scope of what we're in really for today. None of it is that.
But again, the land would be, do we invest in something that's still yours? I mean, if it was an agreement to, you all agreed down the road and we agreed down the road to do this, and actually you want to protect your investment, same as we'd want to protect ours.
Sure. Well, and I appreciate where you're coming from, and I don't want you to feel like you're making an investment in what we own, because I think the intention from even when it was constructed has been to try to do it together. And I think that's the spirit of how the current contract is drafted. And I don't see us, trying to take you for a ride, so to speak. But again,
Yeah, well, I've just got a question. I've kind of got lost in this a little bit. You guys saying that you want us to pursue city purchasing?
No,
No, we don't want to pursue that.
No.
We want to.
we're just saying, look at what happened here.
What do we want to? I mean, I want to come out here with what we're going to.
I think what Gary's looking at is if some reason down the road there was to be a joint split, that the city would buy out half of the fair market value. And we're talking about.
I don't think we could tie the hands of future councils.
Yeah.
And we could put it in a short-term agreement that the city would get the first option or something like that. But I don't want to tie the hands of any future council. I don't know what what's COVID going to do, what the war.
Right, and I think what Daniel was saying is if it valued at $1 million and we've only got 300,000 invested in it, and the other money comes from the Friends of the Animal Shelter or the Delauder, that you all should only buy out what we've got invested in it, not the full half the value. Well, you kind of.
I took it I think that was what y'all were saying. And the second point was you want a parcel of land that it sits on sufficient for the current, maybe potentially future use to be subdivided off from, it's all one parcel now that's got the.
Right, I think
That's it. It's right now, we're building on your all's 40-some acres. And I mean, you don't go down the road and say, well, I'm going to build on this guy's lot over here. I mean, we're building on somebody else's with hoping that there's an agreement of all of us still agreeing. And that's it. It's just you secure your investments.
Just say, Shannon, if you have anything said anytime, just jump right on.
How much land
No,
would you be willing to cut off that you need if this, for future growth, this goes that way? An acre, half acre?
An acre would be great.
Well, I think Daniel and I have talked, you
That's,
know.
that's good, but I mean, that doesn't really have anything to do with what we're, I mean, we're here to come up with a different agreement, right? I mean,
Well, I think,
an expansion of,
well, from some of the stuff I've heard in passing, I think where the whole plot over, and Daniel and I talked about this, is owned by the city. The county seems to be worried about investing money into it unless they can get like that little part subdivided off, and you all still own it, but this is basically for the animal shelter. And they just want to know that that's gonna be there. I think some of them got spooked whenever that got said about it, if they had to expand. Even though Daniel talked, you know, you've got the south toward the river and to the east that's available.
You can look at a map and you literally can see how the sewer treatment plant lays out now in length, and there's like that much room again between it and the shelter, which is vacant land that all we use for is a place to haul brush till we get it ground up. It's literally just an open field. Let alone the area between the plant and the river, because the river kind of has a bend to it that's not cleared, it's full of trees. That's available to the south of the existing plant where it is anyway.
So that was just one option. I mean, I'm sure you're probably gonna have to go back.
I mean, I can't speak for the whole council, but my gut feeling from hearing this and what I've heard before is that the council's not favorable to letting any of that property go. Could be wrong. You know, nothing's been proposed to consider, so. Be honest about what we discussed.
Next.
Travis,
Yes.
are there any other situations like that where the city and the county kind of jointly own? Like, what about the jail?
I think that's completely owned by the county.
By the county. You all want to cover next then? Because I'm sure nobody, I mean, we can come to agreements all day long. It's still gonna have to come to the full floor and so.
Oh, sure, we know that, sure. One I know that I've heard discussed at meetings over here and otherwise was some of the funding formulas. If y'all want to talk about that, and what do you have in mind?
What do you all think's fair? I mean,
Well, I think
Well, what was proposed in this, was it,
60/40.
we actually proposed 60/40.
okay.
And
I think we figured up
I've got this.
65/35, is that right?
I've got it. I've got the math on it.
If you want this is from 911, the actual calls, and that is from them, signed by Chris Sims, and they said you could call him, he's got his number to call him when it was dated. The actual number coming out of the city is 3852, coming out of the county 6148, so we're within 1% to 1.5% to being at a 60/40 split.
Let me
And that is for a full year.
offer a couple of thoughts. I appreciate the 911 numbers. They do tell us something, but I don't know if it captures the full use of the shelter, because really what that is those who've made calls to 911. If you call the shelter itself, or you got Shannon's cell phone number, this happened to me, last weekend, I had a colleague text me and say, hey, somebody's dog got picked up at the animal shelter. Can you give me the number to call? Well, they called her directly and didn't get routed through 911. Well, I asked Ms. Posada, I said, do you have some numbers on intakes, total intake, to all animals coming in as a way to capture what's going on at the shelter? Because really that's what we're talking about. It's really the whole shelter's operations. So she provided me the numbers that she had for the last 5 months, and I've got that for you if you want to look at it. I think that's one point to look at. I'm sorry. And as you can see from the numbers, course, it's not years and years of data. It's just the last 5 months of data that, on average, depending on the month, it's a low of 12% city, high of 22, but an average of 17% total animal intake is city. That's one piece. Go ahead and talk about this a little bit too. Or the other,
Let's go ahead. I guess our contention is that the numbers coming from the animal shelter are more representative of what the reality is. There's a pretty big difference there between the 911 calls and what the actual data from the animal shelter is. Do you have a reaction to that, or? I mean, we can move on, but I mean,
So you are proposing you just want to pay less than 20% to a joint agreement?
if we are only using the services of 20%, that makes sense, doesn't it? If the county was only using 20% of the services, I would think they would only want to pay 20%.
Mr. Treadway, if we could ask a question.
Oh, I mean, who's chairing?
Ms. Collins.
Travis.
Travis, okay.
Ms. Collins, go ahead.
If the city gets a call from 911, is that not directed to the city police? County police would not go and do a city call.
I don't think they do. And that's kind of where my point is. If it ends up in animal control, I think 911 is going to capture your animal control numbers that get called from 911. Yeah, it may go to PD or sheriff's office, depending, or animal controls, they may go there first. Shannon can speak to the details, but for me, we're talking about the whole shelter and how it operates. And it's those that go through 911, but those animals end up over there. If they get picked up, that's an intake. If they call the shelter and say, hey, I've seen a stray, can you take care of it? And they get called straight out, don't have to go through 911. Well, that animal goes in if it's an intake. Somebody has to abandon their dog for moving out of town. I'm moving into an apartment and I can't have my cat anymore. Well, that goes nowhere but the shelter directly during business hours, but that's an intake. Animal control is a portion of that. And the question I have, and it's not really for today because it's solved, but I think we need to work with Shannon to work on it, is what we need for animal control, period. And I know that's a need we've had on the table and we've worked on that and got some of it solved, but I don't know if it's completely fixed. We've made some progress. But for me, it's really animals in the door and where they came from is a basis to look at. It's a starting place to have the discussion, I think.
Animal control is not part of this.
It's embedded in their budget overall. Is animal control officers.
That was my point, that if the city goes and picks an animal up, then the city residents are paying those police officers to take that animal to the animal shelter.
Correct. If animal control is not available to do it,
Less money that the county's paying through the sheriff's department, even
Yes.
though they're still paying those county taxes. That was my point.
Yes. Well, and to that I'd add, whatever the percentage of the numbers are in the city, you can discuss that, whatever that number is. They're all in the county. Because even when they're in the city, they're in the county.
Make a comment.
What's that, sir?
Being a lawyer, I tend to start at the beginning of problems. And we solve these a little differently in the West, and I talked to the council about it. Tennessee law creates for taxing utility districts, and they list several classifications of who can become a taxing district. And unfortunately, they did not include animal shelters, which requires a private bill. But it seems to me that rather than having a lot of back and forth about who pays what, you all should consider setting up a taxing district and transferring all the assets and management to the district and they'll levy a tax whatever they need, and they might levy a tax 1 year and not need more funds for 3 years, depending on what it is. But the idea would be, it would be just an independent freestanding entity, which would take it out of a lot of the political conversation. So Mr. Hardin can talk further about the legalities, but I throw that out because it might make your lives easier in the long run.
I'm intrigued by that. If there was a taxing district, that means everybody in the district would pay the same.
Everyone in the county, it would be a countywide district.
Countywide,
Everyone would
which
pay
includes the
same
city, right?
tax.
Everybody pays the same.
Yes.
I like that.
Well,
I like that.
okay, so nobody pays more than their fair share.
I like that.
And that's why I throw it out, because I like solutions. I know this problem has just created endless controversy that nobody needs. You're all trying to do a good job with a very tough problem. So I throw that out for you to think about. You may not like it, you may find objections, but it hasn't been brought up to you guys before, and that's why I want to mention it. Thank you.
I mean, there's so many different ways you can figure this. You know, you're all looking at the intake at 80-20. If you base it off population, it's basically 75-25. If you do the call ratio, it's 68-32. Current funding, 65-35. So, I mean, I don't think 80-20 is the answer. I don't think 75-25 is the answer. I mean, I think we've got to find somewhere. Both parties seem to be pretty happy at 65-35.
Well,
But we'd have to figure out something for future,
I'll let Jeff speak for his own opinion as to his satisfaction as for himself and what he's seen from the council. But I guess the first point to be made out of the numbers is to show you've been paying more than our fair share. First of all, is on the intake, the number of animals. And then, you know, I can show you when the county government puts money in the pot. You know, if you look at it on a per person basis, current budget, after you take out the revenue and everything, that bottom line money, city and county, it's $4.75 for every county resident. I can hand you this piece of paper to look at. But on top of that, and those of you who live in the county, which is all of us, by the way, pay $4.75 per person. Again, it's just a way to think about the number. And Jeff and I, since we happen to live in the city, we pay on the city side. And per person, since the city's only $14,500, we pay an additional $10.31 a person.
You said an additional $10?
Yes, because so if you take the county revenue that's raised, we're in the county and we pay toward that county revenue, everyone that's in Carter County. City, within the city limits or not, if you're within the jurisdiction of Carter County, you pay toward, if the numbers are right according to the budget, $267,500 is the bottom line number for county contribution toward the shelter. And we all pay that. And then on top of that, the city contributes $150,000, which the 14,500 of us, including Jeff and myself, we pay toward that $150,000. And if you count it per head, we pay the $475 and then $10.31 more.
You said the 150, that was for this year's budget?
Yes.
How much was it last year?
125.
How much was it the year before that?
100.
Okay then, so when we go back to the 60-40
Numbers still means the same.
agreements under the prior things, you just wasn't meeting the half and half, and it says jointly. Your own council come to the floor and said it was a jointly half and half agreement.
It's not joint. I think Mr. Hardin may have said in an open meeting over here that joint doesn't mean 50-50. So we can be in it together, and that doesn't make it equal.
Came to the floor, it's in our minutes, and said it was a 50-50 agreement. Mike Simmerly and Kurt Alexander stood right there, it's in our minutes.
It did not say 50-50 because Mr. Alexander's
Yes, he did.
if you'll let me finish, Mr. Alexander's offer was for what's on the floor, what's in the budget now. We went up an additional 25,000. That's what was offered. And again, and to your point, yes, we were the ones who went up 25,000 this year. But if you look at the split from last year on the actual numbers, it was 65-35. point being, again, the city resident is paying more than his or her fair share.
Now, how do you justify that? I mean, I'm interested, as you as a county commissioner, how you justify having 1/4 of your population pay 3 times what the other 2/3 pay. Tell me how you justify that.
How did you justify in the prior contracts that it was 50/50?
I'm asking you.
When you start with
Is that
something,
right?
it was
Is that
in,
right?
It's not 50/50 in the contract, Mr. Bailey.
not this one, but all the ones prior was.
Prior contracts are irrelevant. Current contract in force is relevant, and then what we're gonna do going forward is relevant. How do you expect us to go back to the council and take 50/50?
I ain't asking for
Well,
50/50,
then give me your number.
60/40. For
Well,
2 years.
where'd you get
How do you
that?
expect us to go back with 60/40 and then accept that?
Because us going to 911 is putting another burden on 911 with the calls.
How is that relevant at all?
Because they're getting calls left and right.
Do y'all pay for dispatch?
We invest
Do
in,
we pay for dispatch?
you invest too.
So how is that even anything involved? So how do you expect us to go back to the council with a straight face and tell them that we're gonna pay 60/40? 5% more we're paying now, you're going in the wrong direction.
It's cheaper for us to have our own.
Oh, it is. That would,
I'm
I'd like to see
listening.
that. I'd like to see that, but we're fine with that.
Again, I think,
I am. I don't know.
I think,
Council.
I'll stand by what I said prior. I think we're both worse off if you go that direction. But it also comes to my concern about the prior statement about, you know, are we parting ways here?
I don't want to.
To the land, but that's basically what you
Well,
just
we don't
said.
wanna be taking
If it's
advantage
60,
of.
if it's 60/40 or bust, how do you expect us to take that number?
Give me a number. Give us a number, something we can pass through our commission that feels good. Because a joint agreement means both parties think it's beneficial to them.
I'll agree to that. That's a fair statement. Not everybody gets all that they want. Sometimes it's, yeah, you feel it's beneficial, but also sometimes if everybody feels like they didn't get everything they wanted, maybe you got a decent
I
deal.
want to ask you a question then. So for 4 or 5 years in this contract, which was wrote, says that you all have 3 members and we have 3 members. How do you invest 20% of the money and have 50% of the vote?
Doesn't matter to me. If we get the money fair, we can have the board make up whatever.
We can work on that. I don't know.
Doesn't matter to me.
We hadn't had that discussion yet.
Correct.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter to me.
I think that's probably the biggest contention is the money.
Yeah, if we had 80/20, and we had 5 members, then we give 1 member.
We can get to that point, I think,
Yeah.
but it presupposes the answer to the biggest question, I think, which is the funding ratio. And I think Mr. Treadway agree with this, I think y'all will too, that the way the current contract is drafted, in my opinion, if this or not at this point, it's purposely open-ended so the 2 funding bodies have a say-so in what happens. However, that's led to friction. I think that y'all would agree with that. Having it open-ended as it is led to friction. Lock in a ratio, funding formula, that takes it off the table. And that might give us both a little less heartburn. That's a mutual benefit. But I think the key point is trying to come to a number that we can agree to.
Whatever matrix we end up using needs to be something that, you know, if this contract's every 2 years, it's renewed or whatever, then whatever you go with, your matrix is gonna have 2 years of data. Now, whether you take 2 or 3 of these things into consideration and work out an average.
Yeah, but, you know, it would be nice to maybe agree on what we're gonna use to be the funding formula. You know, if it's gonna be numbers from 911 or actual numbers from the animal shelter.
Or a combination of both, average them together.
Maybe so.
Because ours is high, what we're using is high, what you're all using to us is low. But
But it may be real
both ways could be real.
because, well, both they could, but what we're funding is the shelter.
Right.
Another thing, I mean, I don't want to get off on another point, but it's kind of related to what we're talking about. And we had this part of this, I won't say it started, but this was another log on the fire. 2-3 years ago, the budget that came over to the city was like double what it was the previous year. Well, not many governments can afford that kind of cushion. So I think it would be prudent for us to put in our agreement too, if we're going to continue to operate as we are, and the board gave the annual budget, that we put a cap on that budget that's submitted to us, maybe 4 or 5% above the previous year. Also with the understanding that if something catastrophic, if the budget needs to go up, that we put some provisions in for that to be able to happen, so that we don't get sticker shock with a budget that comes up.
What I'm hearing you say, Jeff, is really the threshold. If it's below that, we're all kind of saying on the front end, we're okay with.
I'm fine with that. I can't help what the prior.
No,
that's
and that's past.
That's what we're trying to move away from. We don't want that.
And you can ask Travis sitting here, I mean, me and him's agreed and disagreed on stuff, but even I've said that. I mean, I would see your all's points making them say, hey, we need $400,000. And you're like, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, we're in the same boat here.
Yeah, you're in the same boat. I mean,
That's no problem with us.
I guess I was thinking of how I was listening to what Jeff said and make sure I understood it. Sometimes I end up saying it out loud to make sure I understood it. Then you can correct me. But it's really, you set a threshold and say, well, anything below this amount of an increase on a total budget amount, or however you want to word it, we're more or less signing on and say we're okay with that. But above that threshold, really, it needs to then go to the two funding bodies for approval. Like you kind of take it up another notch. That way, if there is something that we find, and I don't know what it is, I don't know.
Jeff may know this.
Shannon, do you have a feel for like the last 5 years, how much your budget has increased each year?
So the increase came with the animal control officer moving back to the shelter. Other than that, it was pretty well consistent. Plus the cost of living,
Okay, about 3% or 2.5%.
I will say this, and you can correct me on this, Shannon. Let's go around for budget cycle. Other than animal control, which is a new responsibility and service we were taking back on, and other than the raises that were passed across the board, and since the way the contract reads, function of the county administratively, so they rode the same across the board increase. The budget was flat. The truck got cut out, so that was the only real thing going. I think the budget was flat last year to this, absent those two things. And then you can nibble around the edges on that if you like as to the detail, but I'll point that out. Again, I think that maybe that's something we can work on. I think I have another one that might be good that we could perhaps work on. And I think y'all may see very similar that we do. Then the issue of what revenue comes into the shelter, and fees or costs or adoptions or donations, or it's the county contribution or the city contribution. And then it's also the expense. And how do those monies, are they assigned for particular expenses or this or that, or are they accounted for? What's going on there? The thing I would like to talk about would be, would you set up a separate, I'm going to call it a special revenue fund, whatever it is. It's a governmental fund just for the animal shelter. That way, all of your revenue show up there at the shelter, all of your expenses show up there. That's the shelter. And then what's left over is in a fund balance for the shelter. And that way, if they can save a little money and you want to spend it on a capital project, well, go ahead.
No, everything that's donated to her is already changed, and what's there, it's hers. That's coming out of it now. That's already passed.
I understand. I just feel like that.
Am I right, Shannon? That's
correct.
And so, what we're all trying to get now is, and this in the county side, actually, I think was confusion. Travis, correct me if I'm wrong here. When it got to be to where it was a revolving door, they'd get $60,000 worth of donations and work, well, then that was counted back in her budget. And then it was spent and then counted back in her budget. It kept circulating. So that created confusion here to when a budget was presented. Well, she's got this much in donations. So that was one reason why we took. If it's donated, it's hers. I mean, we've already passed that here. It's a separate line item. It's hers, it's theirs. So now I think when she presents our budget with us, it'll be just what you give and we give, and that's the total. I mean, if she raises, I think the contract they proposed had a cap on it, but I can't see anybody putting a cap on somebody. If somebody walks down and said they want to give her $1 million, who would say, well, I can't take it because we've got a cap on it. So, I mean, if somebody wants to give her $1 million, then have at it. I mean, that's, all of that stuff's minute. I think the only three things we actually have here is, one of them we've not discussed how the board would make up. The second thing is how we're going to fund this. And the second is basically if something went sour, what happens to our money we have invested. I think that's the three big sticking points. As far as this other stuff, I think you all would agree in 2 years, we look at it again, the contract and it renews because the numbers may change.
Well,
I mean,
to go back to something Jeff may know, because he was probably on the council at the time, Preston wasn't finance director. I was new, but before the big increase from the county 4 years ago. If I'm not mistaken, animal control was through the city with Freddie. His entire salary and benefits expenditures at the end of the year was split 50-50. They would minus off his salary from the city, and then the city would send a check to the county for the remaining portion.
I can't speak because I wasn't on there. I guess that occurred when the animal shelter assumed the duties for the city, and in order to, there was a need for that, and in order to maintain that position, that's what the city agreed to do.
And I think, because Freddie retired not long after I came along, I think it's in the contract that there was a mechanism for that to come out, but then when he retired, that was over.
Right.
And then we kind of ended up in the.
But kind of to Gary's point though, at that time, it would have been 50-50 minus off Freddie's.
I can't speak to what the numbers were at the time. I don't know what the math is.
I mean, that would be kind of go back to that original contract that it would have been 50-50 at that time. So I agree. I don't think 50-50 is fair. And I looked at these numbers and I agree.
50-50 is fair.
You all, city residents are being double taxed. I can't deny that that's the black and white.
So what's your take, Travis, on again, I know it's maybe small potatoes.
I mean, right now,
let me get that out of my mouth if you don't mind.
the 65-35 seems to be close.
Let Daniel finish his thoughts.
No, go on.
No, I'm fine.
No, go on.
I was going to ask Travis to put his accountant hat on and ask if it's small potatoes to talk about. Does it make sense? What the advantage is, or to just go ahead and set it up as a completely separate fund, the way we never run into this confusion again.
I don't think the commission have an issue with having its own special fund. I think you eliminate the confusion that's been over the years. And like I said, if we get to the funding ratio that works for both of us, are we going to, this puts me in a situation because whatever you all commit to, if it's 30% of the final passed budget with which you all would agree to, we would agree to. If it doesn't come back and they don't spend $100,000 of that, technically if you paid it on the back end, you could take your percentage out of that. But if not, you're going to leave it in their fund balance, which is, I think.
I would assume we would pay on the front end.
Right.
No, because as it is right now, we pay period.
Yes.
Then
That's what I was getting to right now, because I've heard you've mentioned that before, but you all pay yours up front, and if they save it, then you get nothing back.
True. Yeah,
So,
that doesn't bother
Right,
us.
and I think it worked for us too, because it goes into their fund and it builds their coffers.
And if you see operations are coming in way under budget consistently, you can ask that question and say, hey, what's up?
Exactly.
We want you to look, and this is my kind of thing at work. I don't want somebody's budget so tight that they can't stand to operate.
Yes.
But also excessive running under budgeted expenditures maybe needs to be corrected, because I want people to have the money where they need it, but also if you don't need it, we can put it where we do need it.
Right.
I think that's reasonable. Again, enroll a little money, that's how you pay for stuff.
Yes.
We use that as a way to pay as we go. You save a little money every year, and once you've actually saved that money, you're not actually drawing fund balance down if you only spend what you saved last year. Good way to pay forward, and then you can save toward other things.
Right. And another idea to think about, if we do come to the funding ratio and we get this special fund set up with their fund balance, is to put a safeguard for them in there of a percentage that both of us minimally have to fund every year. So let's say they have $1 million built up, which would be good for both governments. That year be like, oh, we're just going to fund your entire budget out of fund balance, which is good for city pocket, good for the county pocket, but at least you don't drain them dry.
Yeah, well, and I don't know, maybe this is, again, maybe we can leave this for the attorneys to say, do you want to have, and I think this is a concern we've heard otherwise is, is anybody going to back up and really leave somebody hanging out to dry? Nobody wants to do that.
Right.
I think we all can say, we have pets out there, we have domesticated animals, and when they get out and get stray, we're going to deal with it. It's a problem we all have. We're going to have to face it. So just saying that out loud says, okay, well, we know we're going to have a level of service. I'm assuming we're probably not going to back up from where we are. I mean, if y'all have something in mind, that's fine. I mean, I'm just trying to say that to articulate this as a question. Are you saying kind of like a baseline or a maintenance of effort kind of thing? Say, here's where you are, don't back up. I don't want to make it more complicated. I just don't try to figure out what you mean.
Right.
Well, I mentioned to him a few weeks ago in front of this, that we would always guarantee the 228 that passed in February, and that way, no matter what, she knows that is coming, no matter how much they had with what was. So, I mean, we could drop to 200, but still, I don't want to penalize somebody that's working hard that is finally getting their money and then saying, okay, now you've got 500,000 in your surplus, so we ain't gonna fund you this year. I mean, that's not.
That's where they could add that spade and neuter claim.
Now
Right.
you see where we're going with this.
And then you start building your fund balance, you get to the point where you maybe have enough money to splurge and make your capital purchase of a building.
But I'd love for there to be, a massive influx of donations. Otherwise, that would help us both, and we could both agree to kind of back off. But in the short term, I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't think we have an expectation to really go in the other direction. So that's not the issue. I mean, we can yell hip hip hooray when all that happens. But
Well, another question then, presented, do you have any idea how much your donations have been per year for the last 5 years?
Are you asking donations solely or deposits including donations?
I don't, what's the
That
difference?
was the confusion that came in with.
I'm not sure, I don't understand the difference.
Okay, donations are solely donated money. The deposits come from adoption fees, come from reclaimed return to owner fees, or court.
Those are part of your normal operations, then I'm talking about donations from third parties.
I don't have it separated out. I can tell you together is usually $40,000 to $50,000 on average.
Okay, thank you.
And that's including the deposits and donations.
I think this year, did we kind of project about 46,000? Wasn't that what we kind of?
46.5 is what's in the budget this year.
what you need to Jen?
Yeah, yeah,
That's not just
I-
deposits.
I think
That's not just.
it'd be a good idea to.
That's including deposits and
That's
donations.
right, that's it. So I make that clear, that's not just donations.
They generally are, it's like adoptions. There's a little bit of everything, there's some out
Broken
there,
out, okay.
some, but I don't know it in detail.
No, I think I'd like to see those broken out, because to me, they're two different categories. The adoption fees and fines and all that, that's kind of your operating income. The donations are, you can't really budget on those. Those are what you expect. You don't expect. The donations and not donation, but the adoption fees, those type of things, I mean, you can go on how many adoptions you've had over the past 5 years and kind of use that as your guesstimate for your budget for your coming year. That's just my comment.
Well, I'll add my little comment to that, Jeff. That to your point, I think maybe there's a trend you might could kind of depend on to a certain extent, but you don't want to run so tight that you just,
No.
you absolutely have to have every last dollar.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a, you know, an off month or two or something sideways happens and you can't make it, then you're short. You know,
No.
again, that's why, again, not to the, we were talking about earlier, you know, having vast amounts of fund balance, you know, that would be awesome, but really, what you really need to have just enough to have that cushion to keep things rolling.
Operations, yeah.
And see, last year, I think our budget was somewhere around 498,000, and that's where the $68,000 to $70,000 got confusing because you had donations and you had deposits, and it was how that money was. And that's one reason why we agreed and passed it just to give her what's donated is hers. That takes that out of the picture. Because if you want to give her $100,000 after tonight, well, I'd appreciate it. But, anyhow, it just, if somebody wants to give it to her, it's theirs. I mean, that way it's not going back into Carter County and then, oh, we got to approve it and whatever. That way it's theirs. So,
You know, this is kind of a hybrid situation. It's kind of similar to what I'm into with the Bonnie Cade. City owns the building, but the Friends of Bonnie Cade are actually operating the thing, which is a nonprofit. And, you know, the money that we raise or the grants that we receive, that goes into the nonprofit's accounts. And we use that to make improvements as we can. This is kind of a similar type thing. You've got the Friends of the Shelter, you know, working with an entity of the county. And sometimes it gets a little difficult to separate. I fully sympathize. I mean, I'll say it. I know that the idea has been floated about eventually having the shelter operated by a third party profit group, which I still think is an admirable aspirational goal. But personally, I don't think that the third party can generate enough revenue to replace what you're getting now. The city and the county will still have to, just like we do to other third-party organizations. You know, we give money to Rescue Squad, yeah, the nutrition programs, you know, all of those things. They're not really part of government, but they do admirable things in the community. And in terms of the animal shelter, that's an absolute necessity for us. So I just say I'm off topic, so.
Travis, Gary, what can you give us that we can take back to the council on the percentage, on the ratio?
I would like to see 60-40. Now, Travis may do a little different, and let's try it for 2 years. It may come out, because here's it, at 64, that takes a little bit off of us. It may pad her revenue a little bit. We can get a spay and neuter, which will in the long term help you all too. Because
It doesn't help the city residents. We're paying too much. And much more than our fair share. Why?
Spay and neuter, linking the funding formula to spay and neuter is not relevant.
No. I'm just sitting and saying.
Again, I'm gonna say,
I can't.
give me a number, I can go to the council.
I don't know how the other council.
That's 5%.
I can't go to some of my citizens and say, look, yeah, I want you to pay $15.06 while everybody else in the county pays $4.75. I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. What I would like is what this gentleman suggested, tax district where everybody pays the same, or I wouldn't mind if the county took over the shelter and all the revenue to fund the shelter would come through the county's tax. And if I did this right, what you would have to do would be to raise my county property tax by 1.5 cents to get enough money to replace what the city's putting in now. I wouldn't mind that because I know that I pay this both, and Gary pays and Travis pays. I wouldn't be paying any more.
That sounds just like what Mr. Winchester did.
Exactly.
Because that's even,
You know,
that's even.
so I'm going to keep hammering these arguments because this is not the only area. There's several areas that the city residents are really being taken advantage of with funding. But we're on this right now, and this is a great place to start.
We can't discuss nothing but the shelter. That's the,
I don't plan on it.
That's just.
How come nobody is fining people that are letting their dogs run loose? It's not in the city, not in the county. I assume, but I mean, I've talked to law enforcement. I've talked to people that work with the animal shelter and stuff. Nobody's being fined. I don't care if you let your dog run loose. And what I've found in the county, especially, that all of these people are letting their dogs just run loose. Not a one of them are spayed or neutered. So then you've got, and I can promise you, there's a Chihuahua that's got. Every time I see Chihuahua puppies, I'm like, that little bastard. I'm telling you, because nothing has been done. I myself have called the police multiple times and nothing is ever done. So every one of these meetings we come to, it's always bickering about the money, how much county's paying, how much city's paying, and nobody's being fined. There's revenue there. That money could go, to help out the shelter. I just don't understand why nobody, and then when you call 911 in the county, it's like, it's a crapshoot. And I mean, you can go on any group in Stony Creek and you will see people fighting and arguing over dogs, because when they call 911, they tell them that there's no leash law in the county, which is a dog at large. You have to have control of your dog. And they'll tell residents there's no leash law. And so they get frustrated. They don't even dispatch police half the time. So I was going to, tell you guys earlier, those numbers can't be accurate that you're getting, county versus city, because half the calls, nobody's dispatched.
I mean, I know the city has some laws on the books that they follow. The county tried to pass something, a couple years ago, Gary?
yeah.
And I think there was some confusion in there. People got bad information. Probably needs to be more openly explained. Or probably like another workshop for people to actually ask questions. I think the last one kind of got bombarded.
I mean, most of the deputies, because I'm like, I'm kind of.
What's that?
Very few people came to that workshop.
Well, see, I heard there was one up at the TCAT building or the Northeast State building, and some information got out, and all the hunters showed up and kind of bombarded the meeting, and they canceled it, I believe, is what happened.
Here's the one thing my understanding, and Shannon, tell me if I'm wrong. And this is where it comes back to the sheriff's department. For them to write a citation, it has to be from a officer. And the animal control officer does not have bonding powers, authority to bonding power. In other words, it's not backed by the sheriff's department. He has no legal authority.
Right.
That's why the animal control officer should be in the sheriff's department. I mean, I know how it is now, but we didn't have no choice.
And what about when an owner comes to the shelter to pick up their dog? Can she find? Is there a fee?
We do.
Okay.
And it's the first offense, second offense, and third offense.
Oh, it is. Okay. Well, that's the least problem. Yeah.
Maybe something about law enforcement should be included in the contract.
We can write it all day long, but the sheriff don't have to enforce it.
I understand that, but if it's in the contract, then the sheriff can be held accountable.
That gets to the other issue of,
I never contacted them.
You can-
Try to get them to enforce it.
Hold on just a second.
that's okay. If you can, and I know this is what was tried before, but if you can empower the animal control officer to enforce, the county resolution, or in the city, if it's city ordinance, you can empower them to do it. If it's civil or whatever it is, there's a way to get there. I know there was, to your point, Travis, there was lots of discussion and maybe misunderstanding and concern as to what occurred in the past or what was proposed. And it's not for me to tell you what the county government should regulate, because I don't speak to that, but I think that kind of gets it. Some of the answer to that was, and I understand the staffing issues that are going on with law enforcement. And that makes it a challenge. And really at that, he's only only option is to fall back on state statute anyway, if there's not any additional local regulation. So that's a challenge, and I don't know if we want to put that one to bed today.
Well, I was gonna say, for better or worse, we have these slots that we put things in. One is the animal shelter, the functioning, working of the animal shelter. The other is an animal control. How's that handled? Now, Shannon, tell me, is that under your purview as part of what the animal shelter does? Do you handle animal control?
Yes, animal control is at the animal shelter now.
You can't enforce it though.
Walk us through the mechanics of that, how it typically happens,
So
depending on where you are.
if you have an animal situation, you call 911. 911 will dispatch an officer out. Once the officer gets out, if he deems it necessary for animal control to respond to the scene, he will call him there to remove the animal, whatever the officer may need.
Is animal control in effect 24/7 or?
It is one officer 24/7.
That's important to know.
One officer. We're running off of one officer, the entire county. And he goes out when he's dispatched. He did have a medical emergency. He had a heart attack, and so that limited our staff and our patrol through the county, but our staff members filled in. So at all costs, we try our best to have 24-hour coverage. It's hard.
Thank
We do our best.
I know it's a little beyond where we're going. I'm
Yes.
sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was just gonna say, if that's a weakness in the program that needs to be discussed with the board, and adjustments need to be made with the budget that's submitted. I'm just saying, if we have a need to cover you, if we have a need, if you have a need, you've identified a need and you've asked for the money to do it, it's no longer in your hands. It's in the hands of people that vote the money.
Mr. Winchester had a comment.
I do. I'm running for constable in District 4, and my platform is entirely doing this kind of stuff. Responding to calls to people who cannot get service for whatever reason. I think it's a perfect task to ask the constables to do. And I certainly intend to do that if I'm elected. So there's a law enforcement solution there, just hasn't been thought about.
Right.
But the constables don't have that power right now, right?
Oh, yeah, we do.
They do.
The constables have police
I thought
power.
the sheriff took that away.
No, well, he can't take the police power away. He took away the radios. Different subject.
So I think Daniel had mentioned earlier about a number, what I was thinking. So I just worked off the current year's budget. If the city funded 30%, of course, we're at 35% what we figured up the other day. If you did 30%, that puts you at 126, which is basically 125 for the previous year of what you all funded. So that's at 30%. Gary is pushing for 40%. I think you're all pushing for a little bit lower. I agree that I don't think either side needs to split start their own. In my opinion, I think it'd be much more costly for the city to start their own. Because if you start looking at the amount of employees you would have to have and an operating budget, I think you would start getting probably much higher than the 40% that he's asking for. I think somewhere
For the county too.
right.
Yeah, so
So-
the city, that's it.
That I think would be worse, both worse off.
Both worse. So I think
It would
think we
cost
need-
us.
I think we need to be somewhere. We need to negotiate somewhere between 30 to 40%. I don't know. Like I said, this year was currently at 65-35. He's at 60-40. 70-30 pretty much puts you what your previous year was at 125 at the fixed rate.
Let me ask you a dumb question. I don't want to interrupt what you got something going there, but basically, from what they give this year to if we went to 40%, how much more would that cost them?
That again? What was the question?
Basically, what you're giving this year to going to 40%, how much more it would cost?
It's just not gonna work, so you can do the math if you like, but it ain't gonna work.
I mean, you'd be going up another 21 if you went down 5. You're close to what there was last year.
But if they're not gonna give no more than
Ms.
that,
Collins, as a city resident, would you want us to raise the amount that you're paying over and above for the?
No, because I'm not getting any more service.
Nobody
I'm
would.
not getting the same service as the county residents, but I'm paying.
3 times. Exactly. So you want us to pay 3.5 times? That ain't gonna happen. That's not gonna happen if I have anything to do with it, no.
911 calls are 40%, and that's what she.
Yeah, but the actual,
Through.
we're not funding 911 with this, we're funding the animal shelter, and her actual numbers are different. You can argue 911, that's irrelevant.
I think it's where we have to take in different areas. I don't think you can go off either one fully.
Well, what are we funding? We're funding the animal shelter, right?
And you're funding animal
That's what we're talking
control.
about right
And
now.
you're funding animal control.
Which is
That's
part
part
of
of
the shelter.
that.
Right, so but you have to figure that percentage in there too. I don't think you can just go by one set percentage. I think you have to take multiple.
Animal control goes and gets an animal, you record it as either coming from the city or the county, correct?
Correct. We just started recording like 5 months ago, separating it out.
Thank you for doing that.
But that's recording animals, that's whether you're keeping them or not.
Which is what we're funding.
Huh, is more being picked up from the county when they're loose, they come back and get them, or more from the city?
Well, the city police are the one that's picking them up from the city.
Now, what I'm asking her is, when she's got them in there, basically, just the ones you're keeping and what's going out. So you're picking up more from the county than you are from the city, because I guess the county is bigger, but on the other hand, how do you know that the calls are going through the Elizabeth Police Department if they've called straight? Because.
You don't know.
when this-
You don't know. You lose them. So the actual number should be who she puts in the shelter and tries to take care of.
Yeah, because that's, everybody came through the door there.
I'd like to mention one thing here. Yes, the county is bigger than the city, so you're gonna have more because of that. But also the city has ordinances in place and the county does not. You know, the county depends on the state laws and they're not being enforced. So, that's a whole nother issue. But,
It does make a very valid point, you know, if the county had stricter laws, maybe they take in more intake, but I understand what Jeff's saying, that's not on the books right now.
I'm a county resident too, and I think the commission is letting your people down by not addressing this issue.
yes, exactly.
So it's you guys.
Okay, what do you think's fair? Give me the numbers you think.
I just told Daniel, I could go with 70-30. And we're still paying way much more than we need to be, but it's a move in the right direction. And I'm willing to compromise and go there. Travis, think you got it.
Yes,
I
sir.
think you guys, instead of going back and forth over the percentages of who's getting what, I think you really should consider this gentleman's, what he's proposed. And that would solve a lot of this back and forth. Just set up a separate fund, city and county put the money in there. You're not bickering over who's paying for what. And as far as the land settlement and who gets what with that, you guys once you do that, you can probably put the same amount of money in there. And if you ever decide to sell it, which is crazy, the building owned by one and the land owned by somebody else, and it's county and city. That's a crazy argument.
We should work together anyway.
We should work together, you know what I mean? If you're gonna bicker
That's
over
what we're
the
trying.
money, 50-50,
trying to
and call
do.
it done.
But it's not fair when 1/4 of your people pay 3 times what the 3/4.
That's what I'm saying. If you take this gentleman's, what he was just
I
proposing,
agree with that. And
You
it's
set it up,
private and the
amount in.
county will have to ask for it.
you put the same amount in, both have to walk away with the same thing.
The point is, that's not feasible legally right now. We can't turn the key and make that happen. I like the concept. I have no beef with that in the least. I appreciate the thought, but
You could
if we
put in
want
the
to,
contract that would be a future endeavor.
no, you need to go ahead and do it, in my opinion. So we can talk about that, and if our friends across the aisle here wish to undertake that, we can tee that up and put the rest on the table and wait till that comes back, but.
I was gonna.
I mean, wouldn't that kind of follow what Jeff's suggestion was?
County resident, just for the county attorney, how difficult would it be to draft a request for the private act to do what he's saying?
It could be done. Obviously, the state legislature has to approve it, and we can't create a special taxing district in the city without the city's.
No, it would be countywide on the county jurisdictional level.
I think his proposal was that it would be an equal taxing district involving city and county.
No, I don't think we're in it
Just
at all.
the
It's a
county.
special district that's on for that one purpose.
So you just want to tax the county.
I mean, wouldn't that kind of go to Jeff's point and just let the
I'm
county
in the county.
pay a penny and a half more and just fund it all? I mean, that seems like it's the same argument,
It's the same result.
same result, different way to it, but you're coming to the same result.
Everybody would be paying equally.
Right, that's what Jeff is saying. It would just be the county would be paying the whole bill.
That's
All residents, though, would be paying equally.
Yes.
Right, but it'd be coming on the county tax dollar.
Yes.
City wouldn't fund anything, would be the same.
Yes.
Separate tax dollar that people know what it's going towards. Say this amount is for.
Well, that's what the attorney said. We can't do a special tax district. We can. But a simpler way of doing it would be to just add a penny and a half to your county property tax rate and have that go to the animal shelter budget to replace what the city is paying now. That way, everybody in Carter County, no matter where
Would you
they
pay
live,
the additional penny?
I would pay the addition, I would. I'm on record.
You don't have any choice if they put it on the tax rate.
That's true.
You're putting a volunteer.
Would you pay it, Ms. Collins?
I would, but I can tell you that it will
I own
pass.
property in both city and county, and I would be happy not to pay 3 times on my city property and only pay 1 tax.
You're saying,
I'll pay the tax.
Let's let them confer for a moment.
But everybody misses the point, I think. You don't have to raise taxes. You just transplant the taxes that are already being charged by the county and the city into a special purpose tax.
See,
It's the same penny coming from there and the same penny coming from there to make 2 cents here.
that's right.
So
See,
nobody
the
pays more tax.
one penny on the county tax rate will bring in $100,000. So to replace the 150 that the city is putting in now is 1.5 cents. What the city is putting in now, what is it?
It's about 5 pennies for us.
It's 5 pennies on our tax rate, in addition to the taxes that we're paying for the county. So that's what I'm saying. Let's even it out so everybody pays the same.
I kind of agree with
Is
you.
that money gonna go back to the taxpayers?
Ma'am,
I said, is that money, that 5 cents, is it gonna go back to the city taxpayers, or is it gonna go?
probably be used for some other things. Anybody driven on any city streets lately and, don't they need a little more paving? That's what I would be inclined to go for.
But again, you
But we
pay.
don't get anything from our county highway, but we pay taxes to it.
Now, wait a minute. You said you're paying the $10 and something for living in the city. Mr. Estes, am I true that you pay your city taxes for police, fire, and street cleaning? Because you're charging for water and you're charging for trash pickup. So, I mean,
It's just for the animal shelter.
So what are you asking me?
the thing is, I can't help that they pay the $10 and something there. They're paying that for those 3 services.
No,
This is just for the animal
no,
shelter.
Gary, you don't understand.
Yeah, this is just animal shelter.
This math is just $150,000 total that the city government pays into it per person. This ain't per taxable owner. This is per person, it's per head.
Okay,
So it's just, think about how who's paying what.
okay, so we talked about using the call ratio, which was 68-32. Gary was at 60-40. Jeff come in at 70-30. 70-30 makes you all paying 126 on the current budget. If we went by the call ratio, you all would, which is 68-32, which is 2% more for you all. And that'd be the matrix we go by. That would put it at 134.4.
I'm not going, I can't agree with that. I can't ask Ms. Collins to pay more. But she's already paying 3 times.
Travis, will you repeat that? I couldn't hear.
I can't ask you to pay more.
No, I couldn't hear exactly.
No,
Was it 126? What was the other number?
At 30%, which is what Jeff proposed, 70-30 on the current budget, minus the donations and the adoption, the city would fund 126. If we went by the call ratio, which was 68-32, that's 2% more, they would pay 134.4. And this year they currently give 150. So they'd actually give less than they did last year if we used the call ratio as the matrix.
What was our second number you said?
134.4.
We paid 125 last year.
On this, this budget here, y'all give 150 this year.
I think 70-30 is a good number. That's more than generous considering the total intake.
It's still not good enough for me, but it's, as I say, it's a start in the right direction.
You'll be paying less than what we were funding.
This year.
I understand you
Yeah.
this year.
And Jeff's number would put it back to the 1920 actual of the 125.
I can't, commission never, I'm just,
Yeah.
Well,
To Jeff's point, I think it's more than fair for any taxpayer who is a county taxpayer, considering the call volume. Because, yeah, if it's 20%, whatever the number was, I lost my page. If it's 17% of the, somewhere in between, that's fine. But the answer is maybe from the city, but they're all from the county because they're all in the county. The county exists, the jurisdiction much bigger than the city does. It's more than generous, I think, on our part. If I did the math right, Travis, and I can claim to, because somehow I missed $1,000. Again, I've got it more or less where you're at 126.
well, you say the commission won't go for it. Half or more of the commissioners represent the city. Residents are in the city. So I wouldn't want to have to go to my city residents and say, yeah, I think it's fair for you to pay 3 times what everybody else pays. Yeah, vote for me.
You telling me you can't get 70-30 passed?
why would I want to get 70-30 passed? You're paying more than that now.
So it's only if we go
You don't want
5%
to
in your direction.
try to make things right.
No,
I'm happy with the way it is. And I don't blame you.
No, he wants 5% more than what it is.
Well,
I mean.
then let's let the city pay it all. No.
When you started, well, you got an argument right there at that podium and said, let's go off the call volume. We got the call volume and now we're changing it, going off of what's in the building.
That's a more accurate representation.
Would you ask your district to pay more, Gary?
Well, here's it. You are asking us to pay more because it's still coming from the county.
You're asking the city to pay more too, because we're paying your county tax.
Up on top of what they're paying with their county taxes already.
Try the shoe on the other
And they're
foot.
not getting any more services, they're getting the same service. I mean, if the city were getting a lot different service, more service, then this would be a little bit different, but we're getting the exact same service. But we're having to pay more for it. That's not fair.
Some places would call that discrimination. Now, I don't know. Can you treat people differently, Mr. Turner?
There's protected classes of people. City, county isn't a protected class.
Point being, you expect us to go to the council and the public in the city and say, way more than your fair share. I think 70-30 is more than generous. I think it's a good number. Jeff doesn't like the number,
No,
but
I
I
would
think
vote
that
for it. It's a step in the right direction. Hopefully, we can continue to make progress toward making things fair. We may even, within those 2 years, get us a separate tax district that we can devote those funds for the animal shelter and do away with it. Everybody pays the same. That's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking for.
Put the shoe on the other foot. How do you expect me to go back to my council and ask them to do that?
Let's look at it this way. I don't think you're in for 60-40. I think Gary knows that. He probably knows that the commission's not gonna go 70-30.
Why is that?
Yeah, why is that? We're having a hard time understanding that.
I think because you'd be paying less than what you're currently was all right with. Well, I shouldn't say all right, I don't know.
Too much now. That's my point. We're paying too much now.
Can you give them a choice? Can you like put two proposals in front of them and let them figure out what the pros and cons are and let them pick one?
We don't have one yet. Go ahead, Travis, what
And
were you
you go
saying?
with the 60-40 and you go with the 30-70 and see,
Go with leaving it where it is now.
or you go with the 1.5% tax.
What were you getting, Travis?
Well, so he wasn't, you're not at 60-40. I feel like we're probably not at 70-30, and I understand your numbers. You're right, the city taxpayers, I mean, the black and white says they are double taxed.
Do you think that's right, Travis? I mean, as a person, do you think that's right if you're charged 3 times more than the 3/4 of the rest of the county? How can that be right? How can anybody justify that?
When the thing actually started though, the agreement was 50-50.
We're
And it just
talking
kept getting, I understand that.
Gary,
Listen,
and
it
that's
kept
what I'm
going
trying to get
down,
changed.
Down and down.
That's what I'm trying to get.
And that's why I'm hearing both sides of it, and I hear Gary's point, and I think originally it was 50-50. That's why I brought up earlier about
3 other contracts.
that. And I don't know at what
Are
point.
they valid now?
No.
My understanding was, you may can quote me, or fact check me here, but I think wherever it went sour is when the budget jumped so drastically, and we all took, you were paying half of it, and that's when the city said
That's when it went on.
100,000.
That put the spotlight on it.
So was it before that? Was it at 50-50? I think that's what we're trying to figure out, what point it went off of that.
Let me offer this as an observation. You proposed to me with a clean slate, forget the past.
Yeah.
We know in prior administrations that came up, issue that the beef that came up, forget it. Clean slate.
It comes down to you all wanting, you just want to have a shelter.
Wait, let me talk.
I'm saying clean slate here. Propose something to us that's fair to city and county. Show me why. I mean, we've been talking about this. We know the arguments. We're not going to uncover anything new. So the clean slate, what would we have if we were trying to work this out together?
I'm personally, as one vote, I'm happy 65-35, but I know Jeff's not at 65-35. He's at 70. Well, actually, he's less than 70-30. I know where Jeff's heart's at, and I understand his argument. I would be happy to take it back at 65-35.
Travis, can you give us the numbers of what the county would be? The city?
On this current budget,
No, on 35, 65.
That's more or less where we are.
I think that's where we're at right now.
Right now.
I'll move it.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of people listening.
Yes. City would be at 147, the county would be at 273. And on the same budget at Jeff 70-30, the city would be at 126, so you're looking at a $21,000 difference in that 5%.
Which would be the same 5 as we went the other way.
I think we've made it more than generous offer, Jeff, and I think we can get that through the council.
Right.
70-30, we can. That's what I'm saying.
This is a new agreement. This is our chance to start to rectify some of the inequities in the funding. It doesn't go far enough, in my opinion, but it's a start. And what I'm hearing is, we don't care how much more you pay. We're gonna sock it to you, city. No. It's time the city said no.
Well, what I'm afraid of, Jeff, and I'm just being straight up honest. I constantly hear, this is a partnership. It's a joint agreement. And I know Gary's gonna go, and that's 50-50, and I agree 50-50 is not the answer. I think at 70-30, I think the city becomes an investor. 65-35, that's basically a 2/3 of the bills paid.
How do we come to that, Travis?
I think the counter to that is, okay, you may see us as a junior partner, but we're giving you extra money because the whole jurisdiction needs the service. The jurisdiction that taxes the whole area is the Carter County government. We're pitching in extra on top of that for good measure.
Heard it, and I know this is in the past.
Why we keep talking about it? We're doing something new. I'm just saying, there's a lot of things happening in the past. Why are we talking about that?
Well, I don't want to put Ms. Collins on the spot, but you're a city resident and a county commissioner. What do you think is going to pass the county commission? And I know Ms. Collins' argument.
I'll take the argument out of it. What do you think's gonna go on the floor and pass?
I don't know if it will pass or not.
70-30?
What is it the commissioners don't understand about taxing your people 3 times more than, is that a hard concept to grasp?
It is. I've preached it.
I think so. It must be. Do you guys understand? I shouldn't do this, but do you guys understand that concept?
I'm a county resident, not a city resident, and I'm totally in agreement with Mr. Treadway here. I cannot see why the city people have to pay more. And I will pay more on my property taxes to make this right as a county.
And thank you for being a volunteer in your nonprofit group. That's essential. Can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Those groups are very essential to the quality of life in our community.
It should pass if you're being fair to every resident in the county. City or county, doesn't matter. If you're being fair to every county resident for paying a fair price, then really 70-30 is not really fair, but because we're still paying more above what we're paying on our county taxes.
For me, counties provide certain services. We have those. Cities exist, their purpose for being is providing either additional service or a higher level of service beyond what the county governments do, because we all still live in the county. If we were in Virginia, you could have an independent city and the county government wouldn't extend into the city boundary, but we are not in such place. We are here. So that's why if we have a fire department, we don't mind to pay extra to have additional service. We pay for that tax, but we get the benefit of having fire service at our 3 fire stations. Same for, a lot of the other services that we have that are on the tax rate. That's why cities exist, to provide additional service. The little argument that Jeff's making here is, this is a service that the whole county needs and provides, and that's where it should lie. Frankly, we're being generous and pitching in extra on top of that. 30% is more generous. Right.
Then we're not paying 3 times more, maybe 2.5.
Look, guys, it comes down to, you want to work with us on this, and do you want the shelter? Because one way or another.
We want to work with you. We want a fair and right agreement. We don't want to be taken advantage of.
I want to ask you.
Why do you want to take advantage of us? Why, Gary? Why do you feel like that's right?
I don't see that it's a disadvantage because of the way all the other agreements that was wrote. Because no.
Gary,
Give me an agreement. Give me a minute. I can't help what some prior people done before, but coming over and saying, this is what you owe. We've not done that. But on the other hand, we've had to pick it up. No, I'm asking yours to go put it on there and see how your votes go then. You're sitting saying you're no. Well, why can't we say no? Ask your people if they'll go 60-40 and see how the votes
What
go.
is right, Gary? I'm asking you what's right. I'm not asking you about votes. I'm asking you what's right. Stand up for what's right.
Put the shoe on the other foot. Again, 70-30 is more than generous. Good number.
I think the call ratio coming into 911 is more generous.
I think Shannon's numbers are different and they're more accurate.
They're more accurate than 911?
Yes. Yes, for what we're funding here. We're not talking about funding 911. We're talking about funding the
I don't worry
animal
about
shelter.
that with 911 either, but if we're going to call the shelter and it says call 911 to have a police dispatch and have an animal control officer, then we're going to have to go off
Where do the
911.
animals come from, Gary? Where do the animals come from?
Guys, I think we've seen that this is hitting ahead. You all want the shelter because I'll put it on the floor for us to build our own.
You guys do what you want to do.
And that was my concern from the beginning with the earlier conversation, that nobody wants to see that happen, but.
This ain't going nowhere. Jefferson ain't willing to even go with it.
I know you're.
To pay
I'm
more.
sorry, let's clear the air. The only offer you've made is 5% more than what we're paying now.
How about we shoot for the call ratio, Jeff? That's 68-32. That's just 2%. That's 3% less than what you paid last year.
I can't.
You can't.
If you have to go and tell you don't know people that I represent. Why? And they can out me if they want to pay this. But as a person tasked with representing my people and to try to get things that are right, that's right for them. That's right and they're all county residents. And it's, I don't know.
Let me ask this question. Y'all want to come back 2 weeks and try again?
I'm fine with it, but
I think Ms. Childers had a
I'd like to make a comment just as someone who is a resident of Carter County for almost 30 years.
County resident, not city.
Not city.
Okay.
But what I'm saying has not got to do with city or county. I'm just making a statement that I am a county resident. And
I am
what
too.
I'm hearing is, I hear a lot of I and not we. And there's compromise in everything we do. But I understand it's easy to get emotional. Emotions run high. But at some point, you need to take a deep breath and take I out of the equation, because you're not representing I here. You are representing the citizens of Carter County. So I think the meeting probably, if you all decide to adjourn, may be a good idea right now. And step back and reflect on what's happened tonight and what valid arguments are, because I've heard valid arguments on both sides. Please understand that. But you have to see
We
what.
tax you 3 times more than the rest of the county.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that everybody just needs to
Sorry.
lower their emotions and come back and maybe reflect and look at pros and cons. I agree, sir, with everything that you're saying from being a city resident. Please don't think that I don't. And I feel fortunate not having to pay city and county taxes. That's one of the reasons I live in the county. But on the flip side it is a needed service. We know it's a needed service. But on the other side, if the county wants the city to pay more, then hey, what services are you getting? I understand that wholeheartedly. I've heard a lot about what happened in the past, and someone said earlier, it's a clean slate. We can't go back and relive the past. That's why it's a past. So we don't make the same types of decisions that reflect on the future. So, from like I said, I hear a lot of I, and that's okay. But you are represented to be a representative of the people, which is we, and that's all I want to say for tonight, just for some reflection.
one thing that I think before is I'm not really sure, but it was a dollar amount, and that's one reason why we're looking at percentages. So that would help. try to negotiate some of this
And
out.
you have to weigh the pros and cons, percentages, money, it comes down to dollars and cents, I realize that. But next time you come in, I'll be maybe a little more open-minded on both sides.
You want to come back in a couple of weeks?
I have a question for the attorney. If the city were to just say, we're done, we're through, would the county still not have to provide services for everybody in the county if they are paying taxes?
Not an animal shelter, no, ma'am.
So you're saying that the city's paying, city residents are giving money from their taxes to the animal shelter, then they could still not receive services?
The city residents are taxed as county residents too, but there's no guarantee of what their portion of the tax would go to in the county. All I'm saying is that the county is not required by statute to have an animal shelter.
Well, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if a resident in Carter County
They
is
feel the ordinance, but that's
paying
not here
their
today.
county taxes, should they not receive services from a department that is run by the county, no matter where they live?
So what you're trying to say is if the city decided we're not paying anything for animal shelter, would the county still have to pick up animals in the city? Is that what you're?
If Elizabethton wasn't even a city, those people still paying county taxes, would they not still be able to receive services?
Here's the same.
If we go out of the city residents, we can get pulled over by the sheriff's department, or we can call the sheriff if we were to have a car wreck or something outside of the city residents. We're still paying for that service, so they would still come. Why would it be different with the animal shelter? We're still paying our taxes for the animal shelter.
Right,
On the county side, on the county tax.
Taxes aren't, all I'm saying is the taxes that city residents pay that are Carter County taxes, just like the Carter County residents
I'm
pay.
not talking the extra tax.
They're not designated for any certain purpose. So it's whatever the county provides, and no, the county wouldn't
They would
have,
still have to provide service for those people.
the county wouldn't have to run an animal. If you're asking me if the county animal shelter was still ran, without any city contribution, would they have to provide service? It would be for residents of Carter County.
Which include the city residents.
Yes.
We would still receive services,
Just be as far as,
whether we gave extra money or not.
right, and you get into about the police department, I mean,
Well, I just meant,
right, I mean, obviously
we drive on county roads, therefore we're receiving services from the county.
Sure.
And
Yeah, I mean,
paying for it.
if the city did not fund anything toward the animal shelter and the county still decided to have an animal shelter, then yes, it's open for all county residents, no matter where they live.
That's what I wanted.
A little bit of a twist on the same thing is friends who live in Watauga get covered by the county's contribution. They don't pay a dime extra, right?
Still receive the services from them.
Yes, ma'am.
That's my point.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's why I was saying it's the same thing, but I had a little bit of a twist to it there.
Sure, yeah, the question is just whether or not the county would still operate the animal shelter.
Well, I understand legally they don't have to, but obviously there's a need for it. But you can't tell the city they can't use the animal shelter, a city resident, because they're still paying county taxes. It's
Sure,
it's what I-
if it was ran solely by the county, it'd be open to all county residents.
no matter where they live.
Mr. Estes, I have another twist on that. If the city chose the county shelter, the county didn't have to provide services for the county.
True, they could opt out, and also we wouldn't take their animals if they did.
Right.
Did or didn't do it.
I've seen that happen.
Y'all wanna take 5? You wanna come back a couple of weeks? What's your mood for how you are right now? Yeah, let's take 5 minutes.
Discuss it.
Okay. Bathroom breaks are always good.
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute back.
Where's Brad Johnson at to tell us that? Hope he's watching online. He'll hear me say that. Of course, I'm just kidding.
They said.
Okay, I think we're ready to get started back for a few more minutes. That's nothing new, so.
It was a website.
Bring it up, we're back online.
Go ahead.
I know I've asked for 60/40.
Yeah.
And I'm still gonna stay with that, but when I say 60/40, look at it, that's capital expenditures and all. That's on capital expenditures, so when you look at that, that basically, that's 60/40 across the board. So in other words, if we have to put $100,000 roof, which you're only responsible for 40, then we'll take care of the 60. I think that's fair, and that's 60/40 across the board.
But if you put $100,000 roof, Gary, the city is still paying some of that with their taxes through the county. So the city would still be helping pay on that.
Well, I think they're already paying for that now, but it's split 50/50.
It's 50/50.
On all capital
Well, we go 60/40 across the board. That takes 10% off the whole.
The county would be paying for it, that's not really the case.
I'm a little confused. Because not 2 minutes ago, you said, stay where we are.
That would be on the money, and that was 50/50 in capital improvements, but the other option would be 60/40, and that's across the board. That's for the money, that's for the capital improvements. And I think I could get that through the floor, I really do. So that's taking a big burden off capital improvements on your offset.
Not really, when the Friends are raising all the money to pay for the capital improvements. That's a gift that didn't give.
That's going into their donations, is that what you're saying? So we're gonna start counting their donations
No,
again?
what I'm saying is, as of late, and maybe we can talk about what comes down the pike in the future, but as of late, what improvements have been over there have all been donated either in kind or cash contributions to make the capital projects happen. The city and county, neither one's been out any money. So offering me a 10% give on capital for a 5% give on operating doesn't do me any good. What you got?
Put it out there, see what it thinks.
Same offer, but 65/35 where we're currently at. Is that intrigue? If they put a vehicle in, that's be 15% more on the county.
It's a very generous offer. I do appreciate it.
Y'all have a meeting, what, next week? I mean, it's maybe something y'all can discuss.
It's not on the agenda for a vote, but if they want to take it up, that's the council's prerogative. I guess.
65/35.
However, I appreciate the generous offer, but I think we've made one that's more than generous and more than, I know Jeff and maybe some others on the council are willing to extend at 70/30. I think it's more than a reasonable number. And I'm not trying to beat the horse to death here, but.
Less than what you're paying now.
That's a little less than what we've got now in the operating.
That 65/35 would still be less than what you're actually paying this year. Is that correct?
Oh, it's pretty much there.
It's close.
It's a percent off from
Yeah,
that.
just a little bit.
For the last 2 years, it's been pretty
50,000
much,
different.
it's been pretty much 65/35.
Seven, and they're paying 150.
65/35 be 147 and 273.
It'd be around $3,000 less.
You know, if we did that split across the board, then they wouldn't have the shock at the year end if something got changed through the year was a capital expenditure that they would have to be on the hook for half of that. And they know up front, this is it.
Offer this, if I can do math. Travis, check me on this. If you go from the current to 70-30, what's that make the change in the county's contribution? Do the math and I'll make sure I got it right because I don't want to do it wrong.
So 70, we would be at 294.
Yeah, minus what you got now, which is what?
65, right?
267.5 or something thereabouts, whatever the number is. I think there was a little discrepancy in the budget anyway.
73 at 65.35, so it'd be 21,000 either way we go.
So we got our finger over the nuclear option over $21,000. I think that puts some context on it. Less than 1/4 of a penny on the county tax rate. That's what we're talking about. I'll offer this. Pardon? Go ahead.
He was interested in what Mr. Winchester, he's gonna send out some information.
As to a special taxing district, you just go ahead and do it now, take it.
I don't have the authority to do that.
No, you can at the county, just take it.
Finish to the budget committee and let them look at it.
No, I meant just make it a county operating function directly, and put it on the tax rate. That's the same difference. Go for it.
What was your offer?
If we got the special, what do you call it, the act, individual act.
The private act.
Private act. If you got the private act, then you've got to obey the law too. You can't finagle with the numbers.
You know, I was gonna say, you're talking, what was it, Travis,
21,000.
Why don't y'all go back and see, let's take a little cooling off here. I know we've had some lively discussion. But we've got council meeting next Thursday. I don't know if we can advertise another meeting between now and then anyway. You want to shoot for earlier the week following and see?
17.
Take another round. Again, because.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty well free on the 17th. It's on Thursdays.
10 mil.
Is that 13th of this month? Yeah, that'll
Oh, do we? I gotta look at the calendar.
You
We're
look
out,
at the
Jeff.
calendar.
Goodness.
That's good.
What day?
I think it's the 13th.
If you go about Thursday, is that St. Patty's Day?
Mhm.
Yeah, I can't do early that week. We'll be out of town.
I think
How's the 17th look? Y'all okay on the 17th? You got something?
17th's good with me.
Okay, that's fine. Like I said, early that week.
St. Patrick's Day, if that matters.
24th was regular day there, right?
I don't think that's a city holiday, darn, I wish it was. You wanna try the 17th?
Yeah.
Okay. Either, y'all come to our place.
You gonna do your place?
We can. Y'all been a generous host. We can host.
Whatever you wanna do. I'd be interested to know how many people actually watch this tonight, so.
You won't have to leave.
What's that?
Just work an extra hour.
Yeah.
Bill, some overtime. Okay, well, we can work out a time. If you don't do 6, that's fine, but
At yours or here?
it doesn't matter. I'm flexible.
Here we're live streaming there.
That we can, that over there, so but it didn't matter to do it here if y'all find hosting.
Your call.
Yeah, we can do it here. I don't think, I looked at the calendar, there's nothing for that day on the county calendar.
But that's a good question, yeah. Good.
So what's the day?
17th,
March 17th at 6 PM.
You have to work for me.
we're agreeing on St. Patty's Day.
You want to.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. So you can throw it up to your people and talk to it too. How do you want to structure the board? I mean, what is your,
Well, my default, I think Jeff's pretty flexible on it. I'm putting words in your mouth.
No, I'm flexible if we worked out some formula.
Yeah.
Without that, I say keep it like it is now. And with the exception of adding a member of it.
Well, what would you think about 2 members from the council, 2 from the commission, and 3 at large? Well, you still got 2 people from each governing body. Surely somebody from each one will be able to make it. Ms. Collins can know how hard it is to get a quorum like that.
Who selects the 3?
That's what I say, how do you get to the 3?
That's the problem. And I'm not here trying to create a problem here, but if we're gonna put in 60-some% of the money.
Yeah.
But again, would you just be willing that we pick them, you want to approve it?
3 from the Friends group.
3 from,
At least 1 from the Friends group at large, at least 1 or 2. But
If y'all want to propose.
Because they do donate a lot of money to the shelter, so I mean, they would have a say in.
The commission nominates and the council gives advice and consent to those nominees. Is that what you're saying? That's what basically.
and 1 definitely comes from the Friends group, is that how you want that?
2 or 3, I think.
We can.
I mean, I'm not
Is
against
there
it.
anybody else that would be a stakeholder in the animal shelter? Shannon, is there anyone else that's a stakeholder in the animal shelter besides county, city, and Friends?
The Friends group. At the estate, Linda Taylor, the Lauder estate lady.
That you'd be interested in doing that? That's another question, I guess, but.
I'm not sure.
I mean, that's something that maybe Shannon could reach out and find out, and then.
Well, I don't know if we want to write that in the contract. We may want to have a couple, 1 or 2 just at large, and then if it's 1 or 2.
She's involved with the Friends group as well.
Sure.
Oh,
Okay. Well,
I just want to say, if you just go down to 5, and I know there was a whole lot of talk of that a while back, 2 people are out, then what are you gonna do? You know, and that's where.
and
What was
is there
7?
a problem with the way it is now?
I think 7 would be fair that way, because I'm gonna tell you something, all 7 are not ever gonna show up, because they haven't yet. Always somebody is out, misses, so.
Has there been a problem with the way it's structured now?
With that many? No, not really, no. But there's.
It
been a
ain't
couple
broke,
of
we don't need to
times-
start fixing it?
There's been a couple of times because of your all's meetings and our meetings, that it was really difficult to get a date. And then if one of those or 2 of those had, emergencies, whatever,
Yeah.
it was, there was a couple meetings we couldn't have because there wasn't enough. So, I would caution any committee, anytime, anywhere, if you only have 5 to reconsider.
I think 7's a fair
I don't
number.
care how the makeup is.
I get it. We can talk about the particulars, but I don't object outright to
5
that.
to 7 to me, it's something odd, but I mean, I'd be willing, if it was 5, just letting us know, it'd be 2 from Yonts, 2 from us, and then we pick 1, maybe even from them, let Yonts approve, or 7, 2 and 2, and then they pick 1 or 2, and then we pick 1.
Well, if y'all are saying that you would, on the 3 that's in the middle, whether it's a Friends group or not, you would kind of throw out a slate of people and the council could say yea or nay to that.
I think that's fair.
I think that's fair.
Those 3 in the middle, again, in principle, I don't have any objection to that. Again, we can confirm
But again, I want them rotating, which I think that was Yonts had before, and that was something even, I think some of your people said, they'd serve 2 years, and then they're gone, and and it just keeps rotating.
I'm of 2 minds on that, really. On the one hand, I understand some fresh blood is useful, but also
Some old blood is.
well, sometimes consistency is good and having some knowledge of the past is helpful, but also then
Trying to stagger the city and the county, but
think about this. We only have 7. We want to find 2 out of 24. It's easy to find if they have an interest in the animal shelter in particular. Because look, everybody has interests. They have a variety of things. Some people want to be on the park and rec board, something dumb. Some want to be on any number of things. They'll be on the planning commission, and some wouldn't want to do that. For once, we have to find 2 that are consistently doing that.
and with the way the council's structured, I know you all have split terms.
True.
All of us roll at the same time, we could all roll off. So if you had one on the odd years, the even years, that way.
I think there's pros and cons to that. It depends on how things are going. To me, my thought is if the board is picking its own people and you think fresh blood's needed, pick your own folks, make them fresh. I don't think it's fair of the city to tell you that if Gary and Travis go on that board for 2 terms in a row, that you have to come off by default, because if that's who the county commission wants on there, is Gary and
Some
Travis.
project going that you know, been on.
That was one of the things that some of the commission was looking at, is it being a 4-year term, and people comes in new, you're gonna have 9 to 11 new ones at least in the commission. When they vote, you know, in 2 years, the new people are sitting there saying, well, maybe I want to be part of that, which it's done field. So that's where the rotation.
Let me offer this thought. Make the appointment an annual one. That way, if you get
Every
people
year?
there, yeah, you could, and if the commission wants to
I'm fine with that.
I think if the commission wants to reappoint the same people, if it's a good fit and everybody's liking it, they say, hey, y'all are on track with where we are, and you're doing good work over there, let them stay. Same, I mean, that would apply to us as well, but then, again, I don't see any reason why the council would want to tell you who the commission can and can't send, because you choose that, and if you do it during a process, you know, again, annually, then if things change, then you can change it.
I mean, technically, if you do that, and even if you pick all 3 from the Friends of the Shelter, those are your biggest contributors to the revenue that comes in. I mean, because they're spending a lot of money that they raise. So, you know, if they've got a big project they want to do, then they know how much they may have to potentially fundraise.
That's a good question, though. I appreciate where y'all are coming from.
One reason we was looking at keeping it 2 from you, 2 from us, is because, again, you've only got 7 to choose from.
Sure.
If it hadn't been a problem, that's where I'm from. You know, if things are a problem that need to be worked, it's working. But if they're working, let them continue to work. Now, we're talking about making some adjustments to membership. That's fine.
Okay.
Can I just say, I'm the vice chair of the Friends group, and so my request is at least 2 to match the other 2 that are coming from the city and from the county, 2 from the Friends group. And the 3rd, if you feel it's okay, or maybe that's just a member at large. But I would also request that the board does, the politicians do not choose those 3 members. Because you've already got 4 politicians on that board. The 3 are going to be representing the animals and the people, because we're not voted in, or we're not politicians. So that would be my request. The animals.
Make Shannon the tiebreaker.
Well, she'd want to be the tiebreaker.
No, may not want to do that.
Or somebody from the shelter.
Because she's going to want to be the one who develops the budget, so this board here will be the one who basically.
So, in 2 county, 2 city, 3 from the, is that what we're saying?
3 at large, and I think they wanted 2 of them to be from the Friends.
Okay, and the Friends would pick who they want to represent them on animal shelter.
I'm not against that, but on the other hand, I gotta look at this, if the county's putting their money in it, this is like a business. When you own 51%, you're the CEO, and then you're getting at 49, you become a stakeholder. I mean, that, to me, I gotta look at this as the county, you know.
We are the county.
You gotta remember, we're a
We
body,
are
so
the
we're a body,
county.
you're a body. We should get equal representation.
Right.
2, 1 at large.
We're the
County, county,
we're
and city
the ones out
taxpayers
there
as well.
trying to raise money to help the shelter. So we should have a say-so.
Two appointees from the commission, it's its pleasure, 2 from the council at its pleasure. And by the way, you know,
I'm gonna have to think on the.
Wow.
let me offer this.
To think on.
Let me say
Hold on
this.
just 1 second.
Let's say, I don't know why you have to restrict the council or the commission appointees to commissioners or council members.
If the council, you're saying if the council wants
It's
to,
your choice. You appoint
they want to appoint.
two people.
Yeah, no,
Humans, Carter County residents.
Yeah.
They need to reside in the county, I think makes sense.
Yeah.
But short of that, I don't know.
So I mean, I think that would come down to whether
Jeff
it's
Snyder-
fine if
Jeff Snyder may be a zealot for animals and wants to get on that board. And he's not, that person's not in the friends group, but the council wants to put that person on the board. I don't know who your neighbor is. But, so really you're talking.
They all have animals.
Do they? Okay. Well, so I guess what you're saying is two residents of the county, the commission. They don't have to be members of the commission, but the commission will appoint 2 residents of the county. The city would appoint 2. And let the Friends of the Animal Shelter nonprofit board appoint 2. Then you got 1 more. We got to figure out how.
Hold on, good.
Go ahead.
Now, I don't think we can tell what the council would do. Can we do that? Can we?
This is still a division of Carter County government. We can't, this isn't a board that makes recommendations. This is the board that runs a department and supervises county employees. We cannot have majority non-county elected county commissioners on that board.
By contract? This is a jointly.
Oh, it could be a nonprofit, it could be a separate entity.
No, I mean, we have a contract with each other.
Yeah, I mean, as it is right now, it's completely ran as a division of Carter County government. Everything.
Administratively, it's in your hands.
Correct. The employees, the payroll, everything, everything. It's a Carter County, it is, and the board itself supervises the employee. We can't have non-county employees supervising county employees.
Shouldn't you have 2 from the commission, 2 from the city, 2 from the animal shelter, and then that body vote on the 3rd or the 7th person?
That's what I'm getting at. In my opinion, I think having a non-city or county person on it right now is a little shaky because it is a government operation.
So to Jeff's point, leave it alone.
That you do on planning?
3 and 3.
I'm saying about the planning, now the planning commission is going to change and all, except the chairman will be all.
Right, they don't run a department, they vote on things to be approved, they don't run a department of government.
Think about this though, Josh. Right now, you don't have that. You only have 3 commissioners on the board of 7.
I know, but it's a joint partnership, city and county, and we have 3 city, 3 county. I was a little shaky myself on.
What if we do this? We with approval of the commission and the council, the 7th member, we would recommend be from the friends group to be the 7th.
It is now.
Well, no, we are, but I mean,
So you're saying keep the board structure the same, 3.
apparently I don't know how you do it otherwise. And Mr. Hard wins the day.
Just
I'm
my
aggravating you a little bit.
humble
No,
opinion.
it's okay. No, I'm just aggravating a little bit. And that's a fair point. If that is in fact a restriction, that's it.
Does the
So
board have to?
Is a plan,
Ms. Clark.
is the planning commission not under the county, because the people on the planning commission are not, commissioners.
Some are.
So,
Well, some are, but not all of them.
But it's like he said, we're not over the employees or.
who hires Mr. Schubler?
the planning director works at the pleasure of the planning commission, the planning director.
Is it majority county commission approved?
It's all over the place. It's all over the place.
But that's going to
How
change.
about this? We can take that and research it.
Right, but what I'm saying is the planning commission doesn't run the planning department. They meet once a month and vote on stuff.
They hire and fire the director who runs the staff. They don't, do they set policy for the department and how things go? They're passing rules and things. What's the difference between Ms. Posada and Mr. Schubler? They don't run the department. They set policy for the department per the contract, and Ms. Posada is to carry it out.
Right, I understand that.
All I'm saying is maybe we need to punt that issue and just think about it.
Right. We're talking about a commission set up by a private act that is Carter County solely versus, and statutory either way, the planning commission is statutory, even if we don't have a private act. We're talking about a joint agreement to operate a jointly owned facility that supervises only county employees.
What you're telling me though is you're saying we can't have an interlocal agreement as we have drafted.
We can, just like we have right now.
So, but why would we be restricted on what type of interlocal agreement we can draft between the parties? bring a statute on that. I don't know. I just don't understand. Again, that's why it's no trial by surprise. It's not fair to put you on the spot like that. So I think it's where we need to have the discussion.
I'm just saying it's something that needs to be considered.
Yes.
There,
I didn't want to dispose of the issue if in fact there's an opportunity to figure out what we want to do.
the planning commission, for instance, is not turned loose to spend $300,000 the way they see fit. They have no control over that money, period.
Is the shelter the board?
They are, essentially is.
Who sets their budget? Who amends it?
It's the same difference as far as the budget goes. As far as,
They can't amend their budget without county commission approval. They can't move the money.
correct,
Ms. Posada can spend it within what's been appropriated.
correct, but you're right, once it's appropriated, she can spend it just like
Mr. Schuler can.
Mr. Schuler can, correct.
Okay, that's what I'm saying is
Right, I'm just saying, there are no other,
we have a meeting of the minds. I'm just not there yet. That's not for tonight.
I'll talk with you.
That's fine.
We'll discuss just the 17th when we get a little more information.
That sounds good.
A couple of points. Since you're redoing the contract, then the animal shelter board, that role can be renegotiated, right? They don't have to manage the department. Shannon could manage the department. Right?
Yeah, nothing in the contract that's in there now has to be in a new one, if that's what you're asking.
You can renegotiate the role of the board. My second point is maybe a law enforcement officer should be one person on the board.
Take it up 17th.
Sounds like a good idea. Take it up 17.
Take it up 17th. So we'll go to the commission and put some of this out there with what we found and leave some feedback on what they.
Okay.
I'm saying, you're not locked into that contract anymore, so the board role.
I mean, here's the thing, I'm just one vote, Travis is one vote. It's still 12 other people got to go one way or the other, and I mean, I just don't see, even if I agree and he agrees, I just don't see it passing some of the stuff that's.
You know, I think we've made a very, very generous offer to you. I don't know how you can expect us to take something that's not going to be fair, all involved, and I think that's a conversation for you to have with your counterparts that's come around to your way of thinking.
I understand. All right. Yep, we'll see you on the 17th, I guess.
Appreciate y'all coming.
Thank you.
17th at 6 p.m.
Wolf down my